Welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about the music industry and the art world and methods for potentially derailing and subverting these institutions. And I'll be delivering this through 8 lessons that I've learnt through our predecessors, the Illuminatus, the KLF, the Time Lords, the K Foundation, the Copyright Liberation Front, the Jams, the Justified Ancients of Moo-Moos from the 80s, the 90s, and dance music. So, thank you for coming, and let's start our first lesson. Beg, borrow, steal. Okay. So begin by creating an album called 1987, What the Fuck is Going On? This will be mainly consisting of samples from ABBA and their song Dancing Queen. And they'll actually complain that you've made a copyright violation. So instead of deleting your album, you'll take a pilgrimage to Sweden with the gift of a gold record. Unfortunately, ABBA will refuse to meet you, so instead of giving it to them, just give it to someone that looks like ABBA on the streets of Sweden and start your pilgrimage home. You'll come to a forest, and then you'll come to a farm. And it's there that you'll start to burn the copies of 1987. You'll be really thrilled with the smoke that comes out of this burning and take a photo of it and use that as the cover of your second album. And you'll also get shot at by a farmer who thinks you're trespassing. So before you release your second album, you'll actually re-release 1987, What the Fuck is Going On, but you'll have silences where the ABBA samples are, and you'll have instructions as to how to fill those silences. You'll get back to London, and you'll see a cardboard cutout of Whitney Houston in a record shop, and you'll become really obsessed with her and make a recording of I Want to Dance with Someone mixed with you begging her to join your band. And she won't join your band, but she also won't file for copyright violation. And actually, 20 years later, her record company will contact you and ask you to remix her album, but you'll refuse. Our next lesson is vehicles to success. So write a song, but say that it was written by a car. And tell all media outlets that if they want to interview you about the song, then they have to just talk to the car. The song is actually about a Doctor Who TARDIS, and ends up being a #1 hit in several different countries, earning you a huge amount of money. You'll actually claim that this song is the most nauseating record ever made. And you'll actually print that on the record itself, but it won't stop record sales. So, what do you do with all this new money? You go to an industrial complex out in like the suburbs of London, and you climb a really massive crane. And you start playing your music to the masses below, and it's a bit of a rave. And then you just start to drop most of your money to the crowd below. And despite being kind of anti-materialistic, they'll kind of claim that it's the best rave ever. Okay, so next lesson, share your wisdom. So release an instruction manual called How to Make a #1 Hit the Easy Way, because you actually found it really easy to make your song written by the car. And publish a 33,000 word instructional text with some quotes such as, firstly, you must be skint and on the dole. Anybody with a proper job or tied up with full-time education will not have the time to devote to see it through. Being on the dole gives you a clearer perspective on how much of society is run. Having no money sharpens the wits. It forces you to never make the wrong decision. There is no safety net to catch you when you fall. And another instruction, if you're already a musician, stop playing your instrument. Even better, sell it. So this is kind of available to anyone and everyone, but you'll also claim that it's a kind of obsolete artefact and only really relevant to a certain strata of British society in the late 80s. Despite this claim, a group called Chumbawamba will use the manual about 10 years later for their hit Tub Thumping, and that'll get them a shitload of money too. Okay, so next lesson, have vision. So create a whole bunch of video clips, one of you in a car looking quite dumbstruck with a much cooler rapper sitting beside you singing your song. You'll then kind of only use much cooler vocalists for your entire career. Include a snake charmer, an oboe player, a pyramid, a whole lot of like silk flags around the pyramid, a whole lot of different hooded devils, some Asian blonde twins, a whole lot of candles and various axle grinding guitars. And just keep kind of adding to this ancient yet futuristic aesthetic. Then create a Viking ship that is about to sink and is trapped in a massive thunderstorm, and sing your songs on that. Then you're going to collaborate with a country and western music star called Tammy Wynette, and she's famous for a song called Stand By Your Man, and she can't quite work out why you've given her a call, but she joins the band anyway and goes on tour. She puts in like 110% and has a #1 hit with you, and at some point in Australia she gets so exhausted that she falls over and collapses during one of your concerts. At this point, a lot of journalists will be very curious as to who you really are and what you're actually doing. So instead of doing media interviews, invite them onto an island and get them to take a boat onto the island and mark their passports with a pyramid while you pretend to be a customs official, and then take them to a point in the island and play a lot of loud, weird drone music and chant in tongues and burn a wicker man that's like hugely enormous right in the middle of the island, and then make the journalists all chant around you. So they'll leave on the boat and they won't know much more about you, but they'll be pretty intrigued. So you've made all these #1 hits, you've got a lot of money, what do you do with it? Lesson 5. Expand art forms. So it's time to make a feature film, and this begins in a party in London, and you're filmed leaving the party, and you get into a car, and your lawyer's sitting in the car and hands you a contract which you sign. And then the rest of the film is pretty much you driving. You drive around London at night, and you drive around the desert, and you go past a dead eagle, and you stop for petrol, and you, I think, pick up a hitchhiker, and you go past a burning bush, and then you get to a mountain. And your car is struggling to get up the mountain because it's snowing. And it gets buried in snow, and so you have to walk up the mountain by foot. And you get to the summit, and there's a building there, and it's called the White Room. And guess who's inside the White Room? It's your lawyer, and he's having dinner, and he hands you back the contract and shows you that he's found a clause in the contract which allows you to enter the void. And so that's kind of the end of the film. You just enter the white void. You never end up releasing the film, and it costs £250,000, but it is available online for those that book. Okay, next lesson, direct action. Okay, you're going to get asked to play the British Music Awards, and you're going to have a few ideas. You'll propose to play live with a few giant elephants and a whole lot of people dressed as angels. And you don't tell this to the organisers, but rumour gets out that you're planning to throw sheep's blood over the audience. So the organisers kind of stop you in your tracks, and you have to think of a different plan. Your next plan is to get a group called Extreme Noise Terror to play a version of your #1 hit. And it's quite a grindcore version. And you come out while they're playing, and you're chomping on a cigar, and you're wearing a kilt, and you've got a big jacket on, and the music's really intense, but people are kind of loving it because it's a weird spectacle. And you get out a machine gun, and you start firing blanks at the entire audience. And even though that's pretty full on and it's really loud, the people are sort of still smiling and clapping from their seats. You go on to win the award for Best British Act, but you tie with another group called Simply Red. You're really not that happy about this, and so instead of collecting your award, you hire a motorcycle courier who picks it up live on stage. and then you announce live on television that you have left the music industry. Before you completely leave the music industry, you have to bury your award. And you go and you bury it at Stonehenge. And you release this statement. We've been following a wild and wounded, glum and glorious, shit but shining path these last 5 years. The last 2 of which has led us up onto the commercial high ground, and we're at a point where the path is about to take a sharp turn. These sunny uplands are moving down into a netherworld of we know not what. For the foreseeable future, there will be no further record releases. As of now, our past releases are deleted. If we meet further along, be prepared. Our disguise may be complete. If you had decided not to delete your music, you'd have a kind of extra 5 million today, but that doesn't stop you. You go and you ask all of the radio stations to stop playing your music, and all of the record stores to stop selling your music, and you get all of your recordings and all of your media and all of the albums that you can find, and you lock them up in a shed in South London. And you've retired. So next lesson. Reinvention. You've retired from the music industry and you've come back as an art foundation. And you begin by releasing a series of ads in the newspaper. The first one being abandon all art now. You've been warned. The second one being, it's come to our attention that you did not abandon all art now. Further direct action must be taken. And then a third ad which says, announcing the 4 nominees of the Worst Artist of the Year award. And these are 4 young British artists, and they've got an exhibition coming up at the Tate. So you invite all these VIPs to come to your awards ceremony. You've got art critics and music critics and funders and government. A lot of them don't come, a lot of them do come, and they each get given about £5,000 in cash. And they're asked to nail that to the wall because it makes up their prize money for the winner of the Worst Art Award. And it ends up being £40,000, which is double the amount of the Turner Prize, which is also being announced that day. And so a winner gets announced, and it's a woman called Rachel Whitehead. White-Reed, apologies. And she doesn't really want your award. She's won the Turner Prize already, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with you. But you'll sort of sit outside the Tate gallery waiting for her, and when you play with matches and light a fluid around the money, she eventually comes out and accepts it. And she says she'll give all of your money to needy artists. So you get a bit obsessed with money at this point, and you make another artwork, and this one's for the Tate, where you nail £1 million to a big board. And it's quite hard to get this money because banks don't want to give it out, and all your business associates and friends know you're going to do something weird with it. and it's actually the only million that you have. So it's quite a lot because it's 20 years ago. And you end up nailing all of this cash to this board, and you try and sell it to the Tate, your $1 million, for £750,000. And despite this being like quite a good investment for them, they refuse and actually announce you're a security risk and call the police. So you propose another artwork, and this one is to remove Stonehenge, and you get quite far in this planning. You work with a group of anarchist lesbians, and you devise a whole lot of machines to help dig out the rocks. This gets cancelled at the last minute because you realise that the airspace above Stonehenge doesn't allow helicopters in, which were integral to the move. So you've still got this £1 million kind of burning a hole in your pocket, and you decide to go back to the island. And you take the boat, and you take a witness, who's like a music journalist, and a guy to video. And when you get there, you find a wet, old, abandoned boat shed, and you open your suitcase, and you take out the $1 million. It's a bit wet and cold, so it takes about 75 minutes, but you end up burning all of the money. The person that's come to witness it describes it as really intense, really shocking and filled with guilt, and then really, really boring because the money's quite wet and it's quite hard to light, and it keeps going up the chimney, and a whole lot of fishermen find it later on and hand it in to the police, but the sheer majority of the money is gone. So you watch all of this money burn before your eyes, and you get back on the boat and you go home. When you're at home, there's a lot of people interested in what just happened, and you feel like it's necessary to kind of confront the situation. So you do a tour, and you take with you the video of the burning. And this is a poorly shot record, but it kind of proves that it's something that is not fake, which was the most, that was what most people were saying at the time. So here we go. You do a bit of a Q&A after each film, and you find it very difficult to articulate why you did it, which is absolutely the number one question. So about halfway through the tour, you make a shift, and you don't accept any questions from the audience. You ask the audience to explain why you did it. So I think we should probably just do that really quickly. If anyone here has any ideas about why £1 million was burnt? Any old fans that might have some hints, unknown knowledge? Joel?
It wasn't theirs.
Yeah, that's right. So someone did suggest that they should, or you should, pay your creditors before you pull a dry wank stunt like this. Yeah. Yeah, so there's been a bit of thinking around how this was sort of before Occupy Wall Street and kind of post-data, and it was the 90s when materialism was pretty rampant, and so it sort of really spoke to a moment in time and may not have such an impact if it was to happen today.
So what is it as a precursor to us actually giving way to all material currency transactions? So it's like it's basically just, as a lot of art does, it actually just prepares us for like the next phase. Is that what you're saying?
Am I?
Yeah, it's not really actually. Well, I wish I had some.
Okay, so the second question. Okay, true capital as sold as government bonds is sold, not votes. It's the souls of the individuals in this room that give value to our economy, not the bits of paper or promissory notes on them. Continue. Please.
No, thank you. So, do we actually provide a connection to the economy, or is the economy separate to our culture? I think it's quite a bold act, particularly as there's no more money around. It wasn't a flimsy, fifth of their income. It was kind of everything. So the question, it sort of remains unanswered. You put a ban on talking about it for the next 23 years after you've released this poster, which says, was it a crime? Was it a burnt offering? Was it madness? Was it an investment? Was it rock and roll? An obscenity? Was it art? Was it a political statement? Was it bollocks?
KLF is gonna rock ya.